Why orthodontics? Why should you pick orthodontics? How do you prepare for an application to get into residency in orthodontics? What are the schools you should apply to? How do you prepare for your interviews? What are the questions? How do you put your list together for rank lists? All these questions and more will be answered as we talk to student doctor who just matched in ortho. Stay tuned. Orthodontics. So let's jump in. Doc, please introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about yourself for those of us that may not know you and are meeting you for the first time.
For sure. So, hi everybody. My name is Michael Peevich, but I go by Mikey. I'm a current fourth year at UT Health San Antonio. I'm originally from Bettendorf, Iowa, which is a town in Iowa on the Mississippi River on the Iowa-Illinois border. I was born and raised in Iowa, decided to come down to Texas for dental school, and it's been a great decision. And yeah, as Dr. Darwin just said, I'm starting orthodontic residency next year, so I'm super, super stoked about that.
Yeah, and we will share a little bit later where you're going to be going, the program that you got selected and matched to, and also when we talk about that, we'll share a little bit about the program and things that you're really excited about. Once all of that is done, you submit that information, then you do this. And those that are listening, you can't see me, but you're twirling your thumbs and you're waiting, you're waiting, you're waiting. What are you waiting for? You're waiting for an interview. So tell us a little bit about the interview day, the number of interviews that you got, and how the interview day was.
So I will, but before that, you just gave me a little bit of PTSD with the twiddling of the thumbs there. So before I talk about the interview day itself, I want to say, you know, the from the time the interviews are or the interviews are, but before that, the time you're waiting after you send in your applications is probably the most miserable month I've ever had in my life. You're sitting there, it's anticipation, you're checking Student Doctor Network 3, 4, 5 times a day. You're seeing Student Doctor Network, people are saying, oh, I got an interview here. Oh, I got an interview here. And your inbox on your email is still empty. So even if you apply to a bunch of schools and you get a couple of interviews, that's great. But you're still going to see a lot of disappointment. And that's something that I had to come to terms with because, like Dr. Darwin said earlier, this is a very competitive specialty and a lot of great applicants apply. So it's not an indictment on you. It's just that there are a bunch of people out there that want to get into this specialty and you'll find your place. The interviews will come eventually, but you just can't get discouraged while you're waiting.
Now the real work comes. Now you've got to list those programs or what we call rank those programs. So tell us a little bit and share with us how you made your decisions on these 7 programs, especially since it was after the interviews, right?
Yeah.
After the interviews, what were some of the things that helped guide your decision on where you ranked programs? And don't tell us where you ranked them because we're going to go to that in a minute. But what were some of the deciding factors for you that were a priority based on how that guided your listing of programs?
Yeah. So the number one guiding factor for me was, could I see myself living here, working here, dating here, making friends here, stuff like that for the next 2 or 3 years? Could I see myself living, thriving, and enjoying, this city, this community? And some places I could confidently say yes. Some places I could confidently say absolutely not. So that was great. And that's one of the benefits of having in this post-COVID era, these in-person interviews again, is being able to truly get a feel for the city and the area and your co-residents and the faculty. So that was my number one criteria was, will I be happy here? Because I would pay any amount of money to be happy, and I also pay any amount of money to not be unhappy somewhere for a couple of years too. So to me, that was more important than price. But with that being said, price was number two. Just being realistic, if I can get, the same or equivalent education for a much cheaper rate somewhere, then that was important to me as well to, come out with as little debt as possible.
Yeah.
So those two things, and obviously like geography plays it along with, could you see yourself living in that area? But those are the two main criteria.
And those criteria, especially cost, is very important to consider, especially if you're coming from a dental school where, the 4 years of dental school is anywhere from 300 to $500,000. And I don't know what your bill is, but the average is about $300,000 for most dental students across the country. To add on to that and go to a program, an ortho program, where you've got to spend maybe another $100,000 for 2 more or 3 more years every year can be a big thing. So that's a big factor as well. So you went through your ranks using both where you can see yourself best, the cost and the cost as of the program as some main or your top two determining factors. Then you put your rank list together, right? You put that list together and you have to wait for match day. And match day comes. Match day coming. You don't get a phone call, but you usually get an email, right? And if you have your
Mhm.
notifications on, that means if you got an email or a text, that means it's ringing, right? It's ringing or it's buzzing, and or you check that email and um it's a thumbs up, which you had. You had a thumbs up. So as a D4 who's going through this process and now who has matched into ortho, you're kind of like a residency expert right now. So we want to hear about tips, advice, knowing what you know now and the things that worked for you the best. What were those things and what would you do differently if there's anything, or if there's not something that you would do differently because you got this great result? What were those things that you felt and tips and strategies that were really, really helpful that you want to share with others as far as advice as to what you should do, what you must do, and what you recommend that future or current applicants do to get to match into ortho?
So the first thing you need to do in order to get an interview, you can be the most personable person on the planet. You can be likable, funny, have jokes, um, but you need to make sure you get an interview first. So in order to get your foot in the door, you need to have a strong CV application, and a relatively high class rank if you're coming out of dental school right away, or like a year after. If you're a non-traditional applicant, I don't know how much class rank is important because you've been working for so long, but what I would say is, starting ahead, planning ahead early. Some people don't really want to do orthodontics until later on in dental school, but I would say the moment you are confident that orthodontics is what you want to do, write down a plan. Make sure you have a stepwise process to get to your end goal. Because if you don't, it's easy to get very lost. It's easy to get overwhelmed because there's a lot of things you have to do in order to be eligible to apply to a lot of these programs. There's extra tests you need to take, either the ADEX or the GRE. There's, doing well in your classwork, not only your lab work and your sim lab stuff in dental school, and also finding letters of recommendation. If you don't have great relationships with your teachers, you better start doing that now because you need 3 to 5 letters of recommendation, and including one from an orthodontist, in order to apply to a lot of these dental schools. And this kind of goes into my second part, which is ask for help. It's impossible to do all of this on your own. I'm very blessed that my family has been a great support system for me, and I have a couple of great friends in San Antonio that I was able to bounce ideas off of. And I even talked about to the people who are in the class above me as well, asking for their input on what they thought of certain schools where they interviewed, what they were looking for in terms of a mix of clinic versus research time. So compiling all that information, as well as planning ahead, was the two most important things for me. And those are the two pieces of information I would share to whoever's applying in the future.
Good pieces of information, good steps, good tips as well.